right, good evening. Obviously, Mayor Wagner is not here tonight, so I'll be filling in for him, so welcome. And a special welcome to James Langdon, which is the senior government teacher, and his class that's present today. So thank you for joining us tonight. Hopefully it'll be entertaining. Right? Yes. He's not here. Solomon's not here. All right, it looks like Mr. Porter is here, though, to help us with our invocation. Would you mind doing that for us, Mr. Porter? If we'd all please stand, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for the governance of our city. Father, nationally, we thank you for bringing us through a couple of weeks since our national election. We thank you, Father, that you continue to shed your grace on this nation. Thank you for our form of governance. Thank you for those that lead us. May tonight's meeting be orderly, be conducted well. Be with our mayor as he's traveling. And Father, lead us into this Thanksgiving and holiday season with a lot of joy in Caldwell. Thank you for what's been accomplished here and for the leaders over the years that have made it possible. Thank you again for your presence here tonight. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Doty.
Here.
Stoddick.
Here.
Register.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Allgood.
Here.
Who did I miss? Dittenberg, excuse
Here.
me.
All right. Are there any conflict of interest declarations tonight?
Mr. Acting Mayor, Mr. President, items number 1 and 2 on the new agenda with regards to the LID are substantially related to my place of employment, and I will declare a conflict of interest and abstain from voting on those 2 issues.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilor Dittenberg. There are no special presentations or audience participation that I'm aware of. So we'll head into the consent calendar, and I believe there's a couple of questions. Councilor Register.
Thank you. Just real quick for the finance director on number 20, the resolution to pay in the car park. The operating expenses from contingency in the amount of $22,092.34. I just want to make sure that does not include any equipment, parking meters, anything like that. And if you could just explain to the community why we're paying anything right now.
That is correct. So these are for the months of August and September, and they are just the operating expenses that are due.
And then does that bring us current with the car park as far as their operating expenses are concerned?
We'll call the roll. Thank you.
Doty.
Yes.
Stoddick.
Yes.
Register.
Yes.
Allgood.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Dittenberg.
Yes.
All right. There is no, I think it went okay. Councilor Allgood, do you have something? You're good? Okay. There is no old business on the agenda, so we'll move into new business. Is it working, Debbie? Okay, we're up and running. Okay, perfect. For new business, this is a public protest hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment to consider the assessments and the amounts levied on a particular lot or lots and parcels in association with the local improvement district 24-3. Is someone presenting on that? All right, come on up, Jacob. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jacob Watucky. I live at 618 Trailside Drive, and I'm a project engineer for the City of Caldwell. So tonight's ordinance that's going to be placed in front of you guys in the protest hearing are essentially the last steps in closing LID 24-3 for utility connection fees. We've gone through all the necessary steps to close the LID prior to this. From City Council's perspective, it's just a matter of doing the protest hearing and then voting on the approval of the ordinance that follows. A few meetings ago, City Council approved for this protest hearing and to vote on this ordinance. Anyone that wants to come up and protest after I'm done with the podium, feel free to do so. Basically, the purpose of an LID, from the city's perspective, is to help property owners finance these connection fees to city sewer, water, irrigation. It kind of basically helps people finance over time if they'd like to. So property owners can decide to pay these costs in full once the LID closes, within 30 days after it closes, or they can decide to pay over time. On this LID, the financial terms are to pay over a maximum of 20 years with a minimum payment of $1,200. There were 6 properties that signed on voluntarily to this LID, approximately $321,000, which includes 10% administrative, legal, printing, bonding costs, et cetera, were on the LID, and I stand for any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? Nothing? Go ahead, Counselor Stoddard.
I was just concerned about the interest rate. What demands 6%, what demands 8%, what demands 10%?
That would probably be more of a financial question. I don't know if Raylan could speak to that.
So, Councilman Stoddard, a lot of times with the interest rate, we try to choose either what we're using per market rate, and that does adjust, obviously. And so with this LID, we did set specific amounts, I believe, based off dollar thresholds, if I recall. I have not actually read this LID. Rochelle put that together, so I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like we have one in favor. Was there, you want to come up and give us your speech? There is no one signed up in neutral and no one signed up against, so it's all you.
All right. Hello, Council President and members of the council. My name is Rosario Soto. I'm here on behalf of the Caldwell Housing Authority. I'm requesting that the LID be approved. CHA can make payments on the connection fees. I hope some of you are aware, back in 2015, we started this process to connecting to city services. We connected to city sewers, and for the last 10 years, we've been working to get city water out to our location. As of last month, we have completed that connection to the city water, so I appreciate your time, and I hope that we get a yes vote on this.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions in council? I don't see any, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Any discussion on the public protest hearing? Counselor Allgood.
Council President, I move that we close this the public testimony portion of the hearing.
All right, we have a motion by Counselor Allgood and a second by Counselor Stoddard.
Actually, I believe just close the public hearing part if there's nobody else to speak.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do we have
Okay.
to take a voice vote on that, Debbie?
That's right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Alvin,
Yes.
Dittenberg,
Abstain.
Williams,
Yes.
Doney,
Yes.
Register.
Yes.
Stoddard.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Now, we will hear the motion if we're going to accept the LID or not.
Mr. President,
Counselor Allgood.
I move that we approve this bill, Bill number 80, ordinance number 3641, and request that move for passage by title only. Can't even read tonight.
All right, we have a motion by Counselor Allgood,
Second.
second by Counselor Stoddard. Would you please call the roll?
Alvin,
Yes.
Dittenberg, Doney,
Yes.
Stoddard,
Yes.
Register.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
All right, perfect. That takes us to new business, item number 3. And who's going to give that one? Do we know? Oh, looks like Robin.
Good evening, Council. Robin Collins, Community Development Director for City of Caldwell. This ordinance before you is just to change one of the names in the appointments for appointed officials. It happens to be the Planning and Zoning Director. My title's been changed to Community Development Director, so it's just making that change within this ordinance. And I'll stand for any questions.
All right, thank you. Counselor Register. Oh, are there any questions for Robin? All right,
Oh,
Counselor
Mr. President, I
Stoddard.
just wondering, Robin, if you could explain to the public what your responsibilities are going to encompass right now, which separate departments? That would help.
Sure, absolutely. So when I was planning and zoning director, I was just over the planning and zoning department. Since we had our building official retire and the director for the building division, building department has been placed underneath me. So we have changed the title of the department to community development department and then created divisions. So we have the building division, the planning division, code enforcement division, community development block grant division. And so those all come underneath my realm now.
All right.
Robin,
Oh, Counselor Allgood.
I had a question for Robin, just real quick. And I don't know that it makes much difference, but you were recently reappointed. Did we reappoint you as the proper title when we did that?
No, you appointed me as the planning and zoning director.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that needs to be cleaned up, but I think it's fine, probably.
Mr. Hilty? No, it does not. He's saying, no, it should be fine.
Cool.
Right, and it's just a title only, right?
Like, dang it, I'm out of a job already.
All right, any discussion on new business number 3, bill number 79? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Counselor Doty, I don't have my correct paperwork with me for the language, but, oh, here we go. We're on number 3. I move to approve the passage of Bill 79, Ordinance 3640, with a request to move for its passage by title and approve, title only, and approve the summary for publication.
Second.
Okay, motion by Counselor Register, second by Counselor Dittenberg. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Register,
Yes.
Stotting,
Yes.
Doty,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Allgood,
Yes.
Dittenberg.
Yes.
All right, new business number 4, consider resolution authorizing the procurement of professional architecture and electrical engineering services for improvements at Lions Park in the amount of $105,410. Looks like Ray Lynn, you're up.
Good evening, City Council. Yes, so this is for design services for Lions Park. This was really supposed to go in the fiscal year '24 budget. However, the design consultant RFP took a little bit longer to get back, so that's why you guys are seeing it now, and that's why it shows as unbudgeted. These funds were allocated in fiscal year '24, but they are no longer allocated, so it would roll to fund balance. And we followed the formal RFP process, but only received one reply back, because after this design goes through, if it's approved, we would use CDBG funds to help fund some of these projects. So, stand for any questions.
All right, Ray Lynn, what fund is it going to come out of if it's
It
approved
is going to
tonight?
be in the capital fund, Fund 50.
Okay, so designing the park's up over $100,000 now just to get a design for the park. Is that where we're at?
That's
I mean, that was our lowest bid, correct? So there's many more out there more expensive than that. There's plenty of beautiful pictures as well for council to look at of different parks as well. And so Counselor Allgood.
I was just gonna ask, how old is this bid, Raylene? Is it current?
This is the most current. I believe it is from September is when it was received. So Haley, the city engineer, received it, and then it just, with her transition out of the office for a little bit, it just got lost in the email and didn't get through to city council.
Okay, so this bid is solid as far as
That is correct.
we're concerned, okay.
Yeah.
Counselor Dittenberg.
Mr. President, Ray Lynn, can you tell me about the scope of this project? Because I think Lions Park is a certain defined park, but doesn't the city own property next to Lions Park? And what's the scope of this
So it is
contract?
specific to Lions Park. There's two parcels of Lions Park with a parcel in between that we do not own currently. I mean, I think there's been discussions about maybe owning that, but we currently do not own it. So it is just the two parcels, the the grassy area, I should say. So it's to help put up a berm, put walking paths, some greenery and trees in there, and really make it a park that is really worthwhile to be at. This park is one of the oldest parks, I believe, in the city of Caldwell, and it just needs some TLC.
Counselor Register?
I just wanted to make sure, the pictures that we're looking at in the packet are of this is to show their experience, right? These are not designs for the Caldwell Park.
I believe that is correct. So some of those pictures are just to show their experience.
Right.
The design specifically is to create that design. So that's what we are paying for, is to make sure that we have an approved design.
Okay, and then a lot of times we get asked if why we don't have staff doing stuff like this. So do we just not have staff that can do these kinds of designs or things?
Councilman President, Councilor Register, we do have staff that are able to do that kind of design, they just don't have the bandwidth. So if you want to, if council wanted to hire more staff, we would be able to do more of this in-house. And there's kind of a fine line between how much you can do in-house and what's feasible to hire staff to do in-house, and then what isn't feasible. And so that's the fine line that we're always trying to walk. But yeah, theoretically, if we had more staff, we would be able to design things like this.
Okay, but for this particular project, it was more cost-effective and time-effective to hire an outside agency to put the design together.
Council President, Councilor Register, that was really the only option we had because we don't have the bandwidth to do it, unless we want to add a staff member to do the design.
Okay, thank you.
I would also say, Council Register, that since we are using CDBG funds, these are the funds that we're repay back. We're under a time limit to really use those funds. And so this design will, once it's completed, will allow us to use those funds within that timely manner as well.
For the whole amount?
I think CDBG is not paying for the design, no. It would be for the project, which would come back. And there's portions of that project which would be CDBG funded, yes.
So you said that the funds to create the design are coming from where?
The capital fund.
The capital fund. And
Yes.
where does that money come from? What funds that fund?
Property taxes.
Okay. So the capital fund will do the design, and then the
CDBG.
CDBG,
those
yes.
funds will pay for it to be built in part. And then the rest of that will come from,
Most likely the capital fund or
Okay.
the parks fund, one of those.
okay, thank you.
And just to follow up with that, Raylan, didn't we have some money allocated for some of the stuff in the park from Parks and Rec? I remember like the swing sets and things, when we first looked at it, they're in bad shape. Are we just gonna
Yes.
wait till we do it all at once then? Is that the plan, or?
Yes, there is some, the rebate that we received back from Republic Services 2 years ago was used to help upgrade with a pavilion and some barbecues and some exercise equipment out there. So yes, that's all been, I believe some of that has been implemented out there, not all of it, but.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Raylan? Thank you, Raylan. Any discussion? All right, would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. President,
Counselor Allgood.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the procurement of professional architecture and electrical engineering services for the improvements of Lions Park in an amount of $105,410.
Motion by Counselor Allgood,
Second?
second by Counselor Dittenber. Any discussion on that? No? All right, Madam Clerk?
Alden,
Yes.
Denver.
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Doty,
Yes.
Register.
Yes.
Dottie.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to number 5, consider resolution authorizing the ranking of proposals for the Caldwell Executive Airport Solar Panel Installation Project, the CEASPIP. and authorize the city of Caldwell to enter into a contract with EGT Solar not to exceed the bid amount. Ray Lynn again.
I would hope that Scott would have been here, but he is traveling, so I am here to present this. The city of Caldwell received a block grant from the Department of Energy, where we had to submit a proposal. And I worked with the mayor, to try to select the best proposal that would impact the city, and the departments the most. And so this was, the proposal was to put solar panels on the airport. And so this is the RFP for that process. The bid came in about 25,000 less than what the grant is for. So, if it does go over the bid amount, that we would have some, coverage there, that no city funds would be used, it would just be that grant amount. And I'd stand for any questions.
For those listening at home, could you tell us the amount of the grant? I know it's in the packet, but just for those listening at home or in the crowd?
It's $119,000.
All paid for with a grant once it's
Yes.
done. Okay. I know Counselor Stoddick's going to have some questions on this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Raylene, the only thing I didn't see in the packet was the warranty on this equipment. Was there a warranty on it, and how many years?
There's a 25-year warranty on it. I don't know if you have this page of the packet, but it's right down at the bottom. It does talk about the warranty.
Okay. And after talking to the Idaho Power folks, I know a few people over there, they kind of disagreed with the 25-year warranty. They said, 10, 15 years maybe, but, so is that, how's that warranty work then? If the system fails, they'll replace it labor-free, cost of product-free? How does that work?
So my understanding is that the 25 years is based off of what the solar panels are providing in energy. And so if it was to fail or not meet those expectations, then depending on that threshold, it's kind of
Prorated or
reducing.
Prorated then?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Because like say, if it only is 10, 15 years, and of course the payback wouldn't be there, but not, and I discussed that with the airport director too, so it's a lot of money. So, anyway, thank you.
Counselor Register.
So I have a couple of questions about this. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So the airport got a grant and then decided to use that grant money for solar panels?
The city got a grant that had certain requirements from the Department of Energy that only could be used on certain criteria of projects. And so with working through the projects and the timelines, there was 2 sites that were chosen, the CEC Center and the airport. Both would have been beneficial. However, the CEC Center would have taken some additional funds because there would have had to been underground work done across the parking lot to offset some of those costs, and so, or it would have trench work, so.
So is there any cost to the taxpayer on this?
I would say these are still federal funds, and so the federal funds, that's where the funding is coming from, is the federal Department of Energy through federal.
So it's not coming out of taxes?
It's not coming out of property taxes, and it's not coming out of sales tax.
Okay. I guess probably the question, so what's the necessity behind the solar panels then?
The city, this was given to every municipality to use. It was kind of an allocation. The city received it, and so that's why we submitted the proposal. There's not, the necessity for the airport is really the fund, looking at cost savings. So instead of raising fees, looking at ways to do cost savings to help offset some of those expenses, so.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the savings would be?
I believe about 4,000 a year.
4,000 a year? And to do this, we're not spending tax money, right?
Not city tax,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
We're spending federal tax money.
yeah, but not property tax or
That is correct.
anything like that. I think the other question also that's gonna start coming up with some of these bids, is like with the pool, when they or maybe they didn't underbid the pool, but when they come back and ask for more money, like, are these people sure that this is gonna be the cost, and how do we know that? So that it doesn't, we're not halfway through a project, and then they come back and suddenly we are using property tax.
I would say this project, especially with the cost, is pretty laid out, and so when they say this is the cost of the product, that's the cost of the product, it's not a construction. Can't speak for construction projects, and I know that, with construction projects, there's contingency, and that could create overages. But for this product, seeing the bids, I believe that cost is accurate.
Okay, and just so the community knows, we have asked for a workshop on how those bids work, so that we are all on the same page as far as stuff like that's concerned, and I think that's coming up sometime in December.
Counselor Stoddard?
Yeah, Mr. President, thank you. Raylene, getting back to what Council Register was getting at relative to the cost to the taxpayer, let's take, for instance, say Idaho Power's right, 15 years is max, and they have to replace it. That will come out of taxpayer money then, isn't that correct? I mean, that'll be
That is correct, unless there's an option to get an additional grant, or,
okay.
that would,
I just want to clear that. Thank you.
I guess that brings me to another question then. Where else could these funds be used? Like, for what kind of project?
So a lot of it was energy saving projects, so we've been putting like charging stations, the big Tesla charging stations, kind of specifically around the city. That was not, that could have been a project, but, we have other of those, and so replacing all the lights with LED lights. So, but we have already started doing that, and so that was kind of not something, so there's a whole list. And they all had to qualify with certain power savings, or energy savings, with certain limitations. So it took, once we figured out the proposal, it took our grant writer a little bit of time to make sure we had all the data correct. So.
Are there any maintenance costs with this?
So I looked at the maintenance, and it said that if there could be yearly cleaning, if needed. It's not an every requirement, it's just if needed. So
Did it give an amount of how much that costs?
I don't have that amount, no.
Okay, thank you.
Raylan, but you don't believe the amount would exceed the savings?
No.
I'm going to guess, or there wouldn't be a purpose, and I guess also after 15 years, you could just plug back into Idaho Power, so to speak, and not replace the solar panels as well. I know there was a board assembled, right, to evaluate all those companies. Do you want to go into that just a little bit so people know, and then maybe how long EGT, if you remember, has been around, just so we're confident they're not a new company and going to go out of business in 2 years or something like that?
Yeah, so the company EGT Solar has definitely been around. They're a local company. With the people that reviewed this, it was myself, it was the Director of Aviation, the City Treasurer, Councilmember Williams was on, went ahead and reviewed it. And so I believe, there's a good understanding of what we are bidding on and what we are recommending here. So there was a lot of, with EGT Solar, with reviewing their packet versus everybody else, I think that their product, reading one to the next, everything, solar panels seem to be very similar. And so the output and the numbers, it's just the install cost, right? And so those install costs are what changed. And because EGT is a local company, those were much less than the other companies.
Counselor Allgood?
Yeah, I realize this is a green energy grant and there's a warranty on these panels. What is our reporting requirement? How long do we have to report on energy savings?
So once we have these installed, we actually don't have to report after we have these installed. During the process of installing them, there's a quite quarterly reporting process, but after we have them installed, because the project was pre-approved with showing that data. We don't actually have to report afterwards.
So if they lasted 10 or 15 years, we don't have to report back or anything? We're done with our obligations
No.
once they're in?
Yeah, there's no reporting on that part.
Thank you.
Council Register?
Yeah, so the other question I guess I had was was there, who chose the airport building?
I worked with the mayor on that.
So were there any other city buildings that might have needed
We looked at quite a few. We looked at this building, we looked at the police building, we looked at CEC, or the Connor Field House, and then we looked at the airport. So, and we did analysis on all 4 of those.
I guess my only concern about this is, like, I understand that right now there's a grant. My only concern is the long-term effect if in however many years from now, something has to be replaced or, I don't know, or, you know, there's not like a monthly cost with this, right? Like, it's just buying the system and putting it up. So if we have to replace a panel, any idea how much those kinds of things cost?
The panel cost, I had it up here.
I guess I'm asking because obviously we want grants, we want things like that, but if, I just don't want to put another burden 10 years down the line.
Which I do understand. I will say, like, I'm not an expert at the solar panel system, the director of aviation is, and so it's hard for me to say, answer these questions without giving
There
you
is
the
a
most
warranty.
accurate question.
There's a warranty
so,
on it though,
yeah.
right? So,
I mean, I understand your fears on that, and I get that, but I think maintenance and any of those replacement comes with any equipment that we install. Whether that's doing the AIP grant and on the airport and doing extra taxiway, you know, that's also, you know, additional maintenance costs. So it's gonna be with any grant, we're adding a future burden to the city.
Counselor Stoddard?
Mr. President, just for the record, the panels are roughly $66,000 rounded off. And then there's, excuse me, design and engineering and installation, which is another $28,000, so $93,000 and change is the total cost, so, thank you.
I have one more question, sorry.
Council
So, if we say no to this, then what happens to the money or the grant?
The money is not, we'd have to either go back to the drawing board, see if Department of Energy would allow us to change our project, or we would not have access to those funds,
Okay.
so.
All right, any other questions for Ray Lynn? Oh, sorry, Counselor Dittenberg?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution authorizing the ranking of the proposal of the Caldwell Executive Airport Solar Panel Installation Project and authorizing the City of Caldwell to enter into a contract with EGT Solar not to exceed the bid amount.
Motion by Counselor Dittenberg,
Second?
second by Counselor Allgood. Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Bittenberg,
Yes.
Allred,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Register,
No.
Jody,
Yes.
Stoddard.
No.
All right. Moving on to the finance report.
That's me.
All right, Counselor Register.
I move that accounts payable in the amount of $3,505,836.07, represented by check numbers 182-159 through 182-436, and payroll for the amount of $712,938.83, represented by check numbers 39702 through 39723, and direct deposits be accepted, payments approved, and vouchers filed in the office of the city clerk.
Motion by Counselor Register. Second. Second by Counselor Stoddard. Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Register,
Yes.
Stoddard,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Alden,
Yes.
Bittner.
Yes.
All right, that moves us into update reports from Mr. McDonald on the Public Works Department water system infrastructure. Thank you.
Okay, Council President, Council, I am back here to report on some of the findings that we were able to receive late Friday afternoon. Staff has, we've worked closely with our consultant to make sure that we are giving them the correct information, making the adjustments that we felt like were needed, and then having something to come back and report with. So attached, you have two pages. The first page are the pressure zones for your information, and then the second page is a supply and demand evaluation that we would expect at the end of year 2025. So what my objective was here was in the initial analysis, they were looking at a lot of information for a lot of developments that had been approved that are not realistically going to be built in 1 year. They're going to be spread over several years. So what I wanted to do was go back to the consultant. I wanted to evaluate exactly which developments, which phases we anticipate in 2025, and then have them review some of the improvements that we're proposing in 2025 to see where we land at the end of the year. And after doing that analysis, it appears that we are definitely able to stay ahead of the curve with development, and so the conclusion that I would bring from these results is that we do not have to stop any current development that is in the works or entitled or proposed to develop in 2025. So, a couple of the changes that we made were things that I felt were necessary. One of them was, as I had mentioned, I went through with staff and we looked at all the developments and we figured out which ones were going to have a phase in 2025. And that means a development that may possibly have houses or some kind of building that would be pulling water at the end of 2025. A lot of these, even though we came up with a number, I feel it's still very conservative because really in 2025, the peak months are July and August. Once you get past July and August, then going into the winter, the demand for water generally drops off. The other big thing that we identified as an issue with the design, or not the design, the analysis, was our consultant was looking at a rate per house that included irrigation. So in older parts of the city, there's irrigation water that's used out of our potable water system. And a perfect example of that is Golden Gate Canal, where they may not have irrigation water, Golden Gate Irrigation District. So they may be using their hoses from their potable water to irrigate. And so we already have all that taken into account, and we've reviewed all that with our SCADA and our wells. But all the new development is not going to be using irrigation water from the potable water system. They're all going to have their own standalone irrigation systems, which has been the case for the last 20 years with new development. So we wanted to make sure that that was corrected. And then lastly, we wanted to make sure we were looking at the system as it is currently operating to identify how we can intermingle better the different pressure zones so that if one pressure zone becomes deficient because a pump is off, it'll be supplied from the other pressure zones and they won't be so much siloed from each other where they can't pass water back and forth. You'll see on the chart there, or the second page, I should say, there are 4 major projects that were identified to be completed this year. that would have a significant impact on our system. So in Zone 1, we would add a PRV, which is a pressure reducing valve between Zone 2 and Zone 1. And that's a valve that basically holds the pressure at Zone 2, but if the pressure at Zone 2 gets up higher, then it bleeds off down into Zone 1. And then it also works backwards, where if Zone 2 has a pressure drop and it goes below Zone 1, then it'll backfeed pressure. It won't be the full pressure in Zone 2, but it'll at least backfeed so that people will still have access to some water. So in Zone 1, pressure reducer, a PRV would be installed. Zone 2, we have 3 booster pumps that are up at well 17. Those booster pumps were designed to have 1,450 gallons a minute pumped through each one of those. But currently, for some reason, what was installed is much less than that. I think the installed rate is 690 gallons a minute for each of those. And so swapping those out allows us to use the reservoir that we have up there at well 17 to be able to push water down into Zone 2, and that adds a lot of fire flow capacity. I will also note, if you look down like in Zone 1, there's max fire flow. Zone 1 is 5,000 gallons. Zone 2 is 3,500 gallons. The reason why those are so big is simply in Zone 1 is because of one structure we have in Zone 1 that pulls that demand, and that would be Darigold. As you all remember, we had a fire there a couple years back. And so if we didn't have Darigold down there, then we wouldn't need to have that reserve of 5,000 gallons a minute on our system. But the fire flow depends on the type of structures you have in that zone. So in Zone 2, 3,500 gallons a minute is what we're trying to achieve with fire flow. And then when you get up into Zone 3 and Zone 4, those are all residential areas. And so it drops down to 1,500 gallons a minute. In Zone 3, we have another PRV that would connect Zone 4 to Zone 3, and this just helps connectivity between the two zones so that one zone can assist the other zone. And then in Zone 4, this is probably our most important project. We have well 21 that currently only pumps about 650 gallons a minute at max. The reason that it was designed to pump more, but because after the well was constructed, we were right on the threshold of the arsenic level. And so they added some sleeves into the well, and that reduced the flow rate, and that reduced the arsenic level a little bit. So we're under the thresholds. And I'm talking about, 8 parts per billion, very small numbers. But what we would like to do is take the screens out of that well and maximize that well and be able to, if we need to do some treatment for arsenic, then we would add that to the system. The benefit of Zone 4 and having well 21 pumping at the maximum rate is that it can feed Zone 4 and then it can bleed down to Zone 3 and Zone 2. And just to give you a scope of, a scope of reference here, Zone 4, if you're looking at just the domestic use, Zone 4 during the peak is only pulling 136 gallons for all the houses on Zone 4. The rest of the overage is for fire flow. Zone 3 is only pulling 78 gallons per minute just for the domestic use. Everything above and beyond that is for fire flow and redundancy. And so as we've gone through this, we've identified these projects. We have our consultant already looking at replacing the booster pumps in Zone 2, for Zone 2 at well 17. And they're already looking at having a pilot project conducted for well 21 to be able to pull the maximum amount out of that well. We have noticed also at that well, the higher it runs, the more the arsenic level actually drops. And so if we can keep that one running full blast on the top of the hill and cascading down to the other zones, it'll be a huge benefit to the city. So these are the projects we have proposed, and if we are able to complete these projects, which I think we certainly will be able to, we will stay ahead of the building curve, and we won't have any issues with new development coming on that's already been approved, and we will be able to continue to stay in front of that curve. Going into 2026, we still well, in 2025 and 2026, we still think it's prudent to follow through on some of our well projects. We have a couple other projects that were already in the budget for 25 to get started. We have a water line extension in 10th Avenue that's critical for Zone 4, and so these projects we're gonna still push forward on. And then as soon as we get far enough ahead where we feel like we can stop and take a breath, and that's where we will reanalyze and make sure that we're on the right track with what we're proposing. So that's a lot of information, and I hope I didn't miss anything, but I am happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, Mr. McDonald, I have just a couple questions. I just want to make it very clear that for the rumor mill that's out there is that Caldwell is not running out of water. It's about our watering system and our wells and getting those up to speed so that they provide the right output.
Correct. And Council President, sorry, if I may just also add, there are other wells as well that we are working on. We have a well 13 that's been offline for 20 years, and we don't even know why. So we're investigating that well. We have another well 16 that has a sulfur smell, and so we haven't been using it typically because people complain about it, but that may be able to be treatable. So we're looking at every component of the system we have to make sure we're getting everything we can out of it. And I think your analysis is correct. It's not a supply issue, it's a conveyance issue. We're trying to get water to be able to pass from zone to zone more freely so that we can find those areas where there's more demand and be able to serve those areas better.
And with your recommendations, are you concerned about funds at all, or do we have the funds to complete what you've mentioned here today?
We will have to dip into some of our fund balance in the water department. And as we kind of we don't know the cost to a lot of these projects, and I apologize. I wanted to give you more information on costs, but that's something that we can continue to look at. And we've already been talking to Ray Lynn, and we'll figure out a way to fund what we feel like we need to, so we can get the improvements done that are necessary.
Yeah, obviously water is essential and it would probably be approved. What I'm just want to make sure is when we put these funds towards these, that we don't have another project that is also going to cause us this same problem down the road if we don't have money to fund that project for the next housing development or business that comes into our city. And then lastly, we still get requests for housing developments in some of our zones of concern, even though we're telling them in the paperwork that this is a zone of concern. Is your recommendation to not build on those? Because my worry is they build all these houses and things and get them ready to go, but we can't predict to make sure that each well is going to come up at a certain year at a certain time. What is your advice, your professional advice on that, I guess?
Thank you, Council President. My advice would be, we are making it very clear to developers. If a developer wants to come in and go through entitlements, and if they want to start building infrastructure, I don't have a problem with that, as long as they know that they cannot connect to water until we give them approval to do that. We would probably hold up their building permits, so they can't start building a house. But they could start getting lines in the ground, they could start getting the site ready. There are developments that want to get their entitlements done because maybe they want to sell their property or for what other reason. And so if we are still applying that note to all new development until we feel like we don't need to anymore. And if they want to proceed, as long as that note's in the staff report, I probably would. If it were up to me, I would allow them to proceed.
Just not build the structures so they're not sitting
Yeah,
there
we would hold up their,
for years.
generally, the note says that their building permits can't be pulled.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Doty. Rob, thank you for bringing this information to us tonight. I know it was rushed. I appreciate all the effort. I appreciate the extra work you and your staff have done. I know you have done extensive work with outside partners as well, and I think that has served our city very well. And so thank you, and I appreciate, I commend all the effort that went into a short period of time getting us where we're at. For something as critical as this, I think it was deemed and it paid off. Our public and private partners are feeling much at ease. And so well done in getting us to where we're at today, even though there's still some questions and there's still some work to be done, and you're on it. And I think that's That's the most important thing. Counselor Doty already mentioned something. I just want to repeat it again because it was on my list, but the aquifer here in our part of the valley is better than anywhere else in the valley. You've told us that before. That hasn't changed. And so as we continue to work on development and infrastructure, we will continue to trust yours and your staff's judgment in these matters, and we'll continue to take each land use request into account as it comes to us on a case-by-case basis, as we always do, because they're land use matters. So I have one follow-up question for you, but just in case I've said something you need to clear up.
Yeah, if I may just add one thing, Council President, Councilman Williams. I'm not a hydrogeologist, so I can't speak directly to the aquifer, but all of the experts that I've talked to have said that our aquifer is in very good condition. So I'm not the one that is the expert in the aquifer. I just want to make that clear.
I understand. And then just to follow up, and I think I emailed you, I hope I did, because I don't want this to come out of nowhere, but are we looking at our wastewater treatment master plan as well? I would hate for us to be in a similar boat later on. When was our last master plan done, or when do we have planned a new one, so that we don't say, oh, this lift station here is inadequate, or that pump station out there? And I just think good chance for us to make sure all across the board we're assuring our partners, in public and private, that we're working on things appropriately.
Yep. Thank you, Council President, Councilman Williams. We are looking very hard at our wastewater system as well, the collection system, and we do have some deficiencies. Those are mainly on the north part of town, and we're working with developers up there to help them understand that we have a couple lift stations that are running near capacity, and that's why we have that huge lift station project. Some of you may remember that discussion during the budget presentation. That's down on Lincoln Road. And that's a very critical project, and it's going to be a very expensive project, but it's necessary for that entire north part of town. And so we're pushing forward on that as hard as we can. We're working with our consultants, and we're working with the developments out in that area accordingly.
Thank you, Counselor Williams. Counselor Allgood.
Yeah, Mr. McDonald. If I remember right, we have kind of a schedule of well development for the city. We're adding some wells in the future, or actually currently. Are we on schedule, or are we behind schedule for new well development?
Council President, Councilman Allgood, I would say we're probably behind schedule. We have had, Councilman Williams brought up a good point, the master plans. We've had 4 master plans completed within the last year. And these master plans have not been updated for some time, and it's opened our eyes a little bit to where we have deficiencies. And so there are wells that have to be constructed, and we have 2 wells budgeted for in 2025 that we've been planning on working on. One of them is well 20, which needs to be completed, and that's up on 2026 and Midland. And then the other one is down in Zone 4 is where we were looking at an additional well. But because of the reports we got about potential not so clean groundwater, the closer you get to the lake with arsenic, that's why we've been looking at some of these other locations for wells. And so we are pushing forward. We want to make sure we're up to date on our master plan, and we want to make sure we're following our master plan.
And I would just add that I know that a lot of your team members are stretched real thin, and you know, you got so much going on. If there's something as a council we can do to help stay on schedule and get those things accomplished, please keep us informed so that we're not sending your staff somewhere else or spending the money that was allocated, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because it is, I think, providing the water is a big priority. And so as things come up, if it's going to interfere with that schedule, we would certainly want to know about it.
I appreciate that. And Council President, Councilman Allgood, in the next budget hearing, all you're going to be hearing about are projects that are directly associated with these things that we need done.
Okay. And then just as a final note, Councilor President, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We're kind of famous for not treating our water. And I would love if we can go as long as we can without having to treat our water, because we have such wonderful water in Caldwell.
I don't disagree with that, but our days may be numbered because the requirements for clean water, those standards continue to change and get tighter and tighter. At some point, I would expect that we're going to have to treat some water, and just injecting chlorine is not going to cut it anymore.
All right. Counselor Stoddard.
Council President, I don't want to be the killjoy here, but I attended a meeting with Lieutenant Governor Betke at the chamber here last week, and I think they finally figured out in eastern Idaho that water is limited. You know what's going on over there with the farmers and everything, and I just want to make sure that, I know moratorium is a bad word around here, but we need to stay ahead of this game. Just my comments, we need to stay ahead of this game, because the advantage that we have here is water flows down this way from Boise to Eagle to Meridian, so of all the cities that's going to run out of water, we'd be the last ones. But again, I, appreciate all the work that you and your crew have done too. But, to the rest of the council, I think we have to make sure that we know that water is not an unending resource for us, and we could have the same problem as Eastern Idaho has if we come into some drought years like we did in the early 90s. So that's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Counselor Dittenberg.
Yes, Council President. Rob, I got a question. You and I have chatted about other things before, and your response is it's hard to find a contractor, or we're behind schedule in large part because the availability of the type of people who could do that work. Drilling a municipal well is not like drilling a residential well out in Canyon County. We're talking about 20-inch casings, large casings. Do we have enough contractors around here to drill the municipal wells we need on a reasonable schedule?
Council President, Councilman Dittenberg, it's hard to answer that question. There are drillers that can drill municipal wells, but there's some delay getting them out to the site. And you're exactly right. A municipal well is very different than a domestic well for a house or something. And we always start with a test well so we can verify the quality of water and the quantity in each of the different aquifers before we actually drill the production well. But yeah, if we had more drillers that were competent in that type of drilling, these projects would probably be able to happen a little quicker. But we are dealing with the hand that we're dealt, and we're doing the best we can to get contractors on board.
All right, any other questions from Mr. McDonald? All right, thank you so much for the update. Next will be Downtown Parking Committee updated report. Council Register.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit tonight to the council. I've already sent you an email, but also to the community. After the parking meters were removed, we always knew there was still going to be a continued problem with parking downtown. There always has been, there is always going to be, and it may even be a little bit worse now with the Tillian apartments down there, as well as employees that park on the street. So instead of going out and hiring another parking consultant or spending a bunch of money, we I asked the mayor actually if we could put together a committee that consisted of community members to come in and give their thoughts, opinions. We're not experts, but the people who do spend time down there. So myself and Councilor Doty sit on this committee. It is made up of business owners, community members, and some city staff. However, it is completely community driven, and the city staff is there to answer questions as we need it, such as codes and things like that. So this really is participated by the community. We've had a couple of really good meetings, and we have come up with some ideas for parking down there, and this is where council comes in, because there will have to be a code amendment. So we're at this point sort of looking for guidance from the council so that we can come back maybe even at the next meeting and have the code amended, and then start putting up signs or whatever we decide to do. From having our meetings, we have decided that the boundaries for parking enforcement should be from Cleveland to the south side of Albany from 5th to 10th. Initially, we talked about a 3-hour time limit on all the streets, with unlimited parking times in city lots. So there wouldn't be any time frames or anything like that in the city lots, so you could park there as long as you wanted to. However, there would be no parking, or I'm sorry, no overnight parking from 2 in the morning until 6 in the morning in every lot and on all the streets to clear out cars that might be left or abandoned vehicles or anything like that. After we started looking at some more information, including some information that we received, that Roger Brooks, actually, who put together the downtown, has suggested, not directly to us, but in different things that he's done, that 4 hours is actually a better number, because the point is to bring people downtown without rushing them out. So you want people to have time to go have dinner or lunch and shop and not be rushed to leave. We talked about whether we should be doing this Monday through Friday, Tuesday through Saturday, or just every day. We did do a survey, and it was, not everybody answered the survey, but out of the people who did answer the survey, it was suggested that we do 4 hours Tuesday through Saturday, 8 to 5, and then with no parking overnight on any day from 2 to 6 in the morning. We could also do, if the council wanted to, we could also do graduated parking where we had, 2 hours around the core of the downtown and then 3 hours outside of there and 4 hours outside of there, if that's what the council wanted to do. But this is what the committee has come up with, basically, was either 3 or 4 hours Tuesday through Saturday, and then unlimited time in the lots with the exception of overnight 2 to 6. They also suggested that we have a 5-hour time limit on the streets that are directly surrounding the movie theater, so that movies, for some reason, are getting longer. So if there's a 2.5, 3-hour movie and people want to have dinner, that they are not rushed out or feel like they can't enjoy the downtown. In that same survey that we did, it was suggested that we have 20-minute pickup spaces, and more than we have right now. We don't have a whole lot in the middle of a block. We have them sort of on the end of the blocks and not really in the middle, so we want to make sure that there's enough for whatever businesses there are, and to add spaces, 5 additional spaces around the post office and change those times to 20 minutes. Right now they're 10 minutes, which makes it kind of hard. We have, I believe, 5 spaces on, I guess, is that Albany, right? Now I'm going to get my streets mixed up. But then we're looking at 5 spaces on the other side so that there's more spaces for post office pickup. We do know that enforcement is going to be something that we are going to have to really take a look at on how to do this. The first thing we are trying to do is change the code and get the signs ordered and the signs up. We do know that we're going to be doing this in phases. We have talked to the police department, who will help us as they can. It's not going to be a high priority thing. But if there's, a car on the street between 2 and 6 in that boundary area, it would be easy to enforce. We've talked with planning and zoning and the traffic control I guess that's her traffic control officer, is going to be able to put this area on her route. So she will be down there. We've talked about long-term solutions. I know we will probably at some point have to budget for more of this. However, the police chief has said that we can utilize their CSOs as they get them hired. And also we've talked about working with the police department and developing some sort of citizen on patrol committee. NAMPA does that. And it's very successful. So we have some options on enforcement, but it is going to be a little bit and probably in stages. We were looking online earlier. There is a way to make your payments online, so all of that is already done. Some other things that the committee did bring up, though, that they feel like should be addressed right away, and this doesn't necessarily pertain to the parking code, but there is concern about the lighting by the tracks, and then when you're walking up to those free lots or untimed lots. There was some different suggestions, like even just upgrading to brighter bulbs, if that was a possibility, or having even construction-type lighting that turned on in those areas after dark, and that lighting some of those lots might help move people to those lots instead of also parking downtown, and it will also help some of the business owners who have complaints about the safety of people walking to the lots, those kinds of things. There was also a suggestion to make sure that all of our handicap parking is ADA compliant, and that if we can add more handicap parking to the middle of the blocks instead of on the ends. It was brought up that you have to have a ramp, so there are some places in the middle of the blocks that do have the ramps already, as long as they're ADA compliant, because there were some business owners that talked about how they have people with disabilities and they have to park a block away because that's where the handicap parking is. So those are the kinds of things that we can look at, and maybe even getting ahead of what the law requires us to do. The current law says we have to have one for every 35 spaces, but it was suggested that we have 1.5 for every 35 spaces, so that if that law changes in the future, we're already ahead of it. We also discussed the possibility of working with private businesses at some point, not necessarily right now, but working with private businesses to see if they wanted to open their own lots after they close, and even if that was something maybe they charged for or whatever, but we're just trying to find partnerships that will make sense to the city, and make sure that we have enough parking, basically. So the code itself, we would, if council was on board with this, council would we'd have to decide the times, and then we would have the city, I guess, planning and zoning would write the code and then bring that back for approval. And that would be, again, the times. And then we're also suggesting that in the current code, City Code 9712, it needs to be completely updated, but we also suggest that we remove any mention of paid parking, just as a goodwill gesture, basically, so that if the city ever decides to come back with any kind of paid parking, they actually do have to bring it to council. It's not already in the code. And I think that would help with some of the trust with the community and bridge some of that anger, I don't know what another word is, but to just remove that if that's possible, so that we don't have any mention of paid parking. So again, if it has to come back, it has to come back in an official capacity. So we did check with both Rob, and then I spoke to Bruce Mills, who was a really big help to me with looking at the signs. So we have already 60 to 70 signs that we had before when we had 3-hour parking. So we could reuse those signs if that's what we wanted to do at no cost. If we want to change the times as suggested by the committee, we can either, it's sort of a little bit complicated, but if we had the sign and all we were doing was changing from 3 hours to 4 hours, and it was gonna be Monday through Friday, which is printed on the sign already, they can put a sticker over it on the making the 3 a 4, and that's the way it would be. If we change it to, say, 4 hours, Tuesday through Saturday, it just wouldn't look right to put stickers all over the sign, so we would have them reprinted at about $50 a sign. And then we would also need to print signs saying that there's no overnight parking and those times, as well as if violators will be towed kind of thing. Apparently, we don't have to have the code on there, but that's just was suggested by the city. And those signs would also cost $50. So if we reprinted all the signs using the poles that we have, the max would be about $7,000 to redo the signs and include all the stuff that we need. And then there's some other things which we don't necessarily need to go over tonight, but sort of about the communication on how to put this out to the community, which we can talk about once we actually have it out there. And I think that was pretty much it.
All right, so just a couple comments. It sounds like you have a couple options, like an option 1 and option 2, so I think before, just speaking for me, before I can decide what direction we're gonna go, we need to know what are the options, right? Weren't there at least two? So maybe get them outlined so that we know what your option one and option two is. And then second question is, do you plan on putting that out to the public for public comment to see if the committee got it right, or if there's any suggestions from the public in its entirety?
So we think that the public comment would come when we did the actual code amendment. If there, would there be a space for public to speak during that time, Debbie?
Yeah, you can always have a sign-up sheet as far as that goes. It's a legislative issue. I'm sorry, I wasn't on microphone. Yes, you can have a sign-up sheet for any type of legislative issue and take comment.
Okay.
But wasn't the argument from the public that we weren't listening to them, so would we want to put it out to them and let them go at it for a little while and give us their suggestions if the
Well, I mean,
committee got it right?
we certainly could, but we did put people on the committee that represent some of those social media groups and bigger voices so that they would have that representation. But we could certainly do a poll or whatever it is, citywide, if the council was more comfortable with that. But basically, the options, no matter who decides, is 4 hours Monday through Friday, 4 hours Tuesday through Saturday, 4 hours all the time, or the same thing with 3 hours, is basically, I think, kind of what it boils down to.
Right, which is why I'm saying maybe it should go out to the public to see what they think is the best option.
We can do that.
So I suggest then that we probably just get the news out like we've done with the comp plan and the hotel plan, then we can do comments through city clerk at cityofcaldwell.org.
Yeah, if we want to do comments through the city clerk, and then we'll see if some of the social media pages will put out a poll and sort of collect it that way as well. We just don't want to delay it too much. So hopefully by next meeting, we would have a solid answer, and then we could come up with what we're doing so that we can get on the list to put the signs up, because the street department's very busy too. And we need to get people parking where they're supposed to be.
Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you.
Sorry, could I
Oh,
just,
Sure, Councilor Williams?
that was a lot of information. Could you forward that to me, or, because there's a lot to digest
Yeah.
in just hearing you the first time through. Could you send that to me?
I did send an email with this, but
When?
maybe, like a week ago, maybe?
Oh.
But,
But I think getting the options together, like, this is option one, option two,
yeah, the options I can
and then.
detail out, but
Okay, that would help.
there was a lot of information in the email, more broad, like what we've been working on and stuff like that. So I think what we'll probably do is if we want to do a public poll, kind of do that first, I guess.
All right. It looks like we're moving on to council comments. Should we start down here with Councilor Dittenberg this time?
You caught me off guard. I haven't thought of anything to say. So have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Councilor Allgood?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councilor Williams?
Just, I think we got something big coming up on Friday.
Do we?
And, at Winter Wonderland.
Couple things.
And looking forward to the lights being on, and we are famous for them, so let's go, Caldwell.
Yes, and the rodeo, the dirt dinner event is out there as well on Friday, so you have to do both. Go to that one, run here, and then run back to that one, so that's great. This week also, council was honored to attend the C of I football game, and all their praise that they gave to council for assisting with that area, especially the turf field this year. And then just today, if you didn't notice, the rodeo grounds, several councilors also attended that, and they have demolished, so to speak. It's gone, finally. The announcer's booth and the new announcer's booth will be assembled before the next rodeo with several skyboxes. So if you haven't seen that, it's online on lots of different places, so go ahead and take a look at that. And Council Register.
I don't have anything else other than Thursday is World Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Day, so if you wear purple in support, that's always much appreciated.
All right, thank you. Councilor Stoddard.
Yes, Council President, I just wanted to publicly thank the mayor. We had a good turnout at our Veterans ceremony last Monday. He kind of had double duty, 2 speeches, but very well attended, went very well, and want to thank him for that. And also want to thank you, Mr. President, for a good presentation at the demolishing ceremony today at the rodeo grounds. That went well too, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, I guess we will adjourn, and then the next meeting is scheduled for 6 PM here at the Chambers on December 2nd, 2024. Everybody have a safe Thanksgiving or any other event you may attend. Thank you.